Katlin. I am the candidate for intergenerational ministry on Bishop Jeff Reddell's staff, and she sends her warmest greetings to you all at St. John the Baptist here in Glendale. I want to thank you for having me with you today. I had such a wonderful time meeting with the people at the 8 o'clock service, and that crybaby is mine. Can you hear me now? All right. You know, I heard a sermon a few weeks ago, actually at an ordination service, that the preacher, she was from a different denomination, and she talked about that old Verizon commercial, "Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?" Thank you. Father Tim, can you help me here for a second, too? I want to not drop this. There we go. All right, we're good. All right. Hello. All right. So she talked about, I'm kind of changing tracks here. You're going to get a different sermon than the 8 o'clock. Oh, this is what parents do, right, parents? Oh, we got to be adaptable. And you know what? I think that it's a good Christian lesson too, right? That in this world that demands so much of all of us and that fights for our attention in every direction, everything wants more of us. We need to be discerning about where we lend our energy to and prioritize and who we give what to. So the fact that you all have chosen of your own free will to get up on a Sunday morning and come to church and worship God and Jesus and believe that there is good in the world, I am so inspired and encouraged in my own faith by that. When you could be anywhere else and you've decided to come here, to remember that Jesus lives and that there is hope in a hurting world, and that we can raise that up and amplify it together when we gather. And I give thanks for you and for that today. The gospel today, I was talking about, can you hear me now? So this preacher, she was talking about that old commercial, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? And Jesus, in many ways, was embodying that phrase. You want to sit right here? All right here. You sit right here. You watch me, okay? Make sure I don't get lost. Okay. So in many ways that Jesus, in his parables and in his teaching, he's teaching the same thing. He's saying the same thing over and over and over again in all of these different ways. And it's like he's saying over and over again, can you hear me now? Right? Let me tell you the story of love through this parable. Let me tell you the story of love through this other way. Let me tell you what God is like by the way that I go and I heal those who have been sick and suffering. Let me show you what God is like by whom I invite to the banquet Let me show you what love and mercy looks like by the religious rules I'm willing to break. Let me show you God's love in my life, in my death, and in my resurrection. He says over and over and over again, can you hear me now? Can you hear me about God's love? Can you hear me about God's mercy? Can you hear me when I say it's for all beings? Today's gospel story is given to us by the author Luke. Now, before Luke was a disciple of Jesus, he was a physician. He was a healer in his community. And when Luke writes about Jesus' life, he writes from the healer's point of view. He writes with a belief from a perspective that the good news of Jesus Christ can truly sew up lacerations of the soul. That the good news of Jesus Christ, then 2,000 years ago and now, in an incredibly different world, an incredibly different time, can sew up suffering souls, can be a healing light in a dark place. The healer, Luke, uses his words to point us toward the greatest healer, the healer of souls, Jesus for us. And this Jesus that we have gotten out of bed, and anybody with kids in the room that you have wrestled those kids to the church, and those who have grown kids or grandkids someplace else, you get it, that it takes a lot just to get from the front door of the house to the car and from the car to the church. So the fact that your community here has invested its time and resources hiring a new children's minister who is awesome. Way to go, Julie. Way to go, church. This family ministry is one that each person here has a place in. No matter if you've never had your own kids before, or if your kids have grown and moved away, no matter if you're the favorite auntie, uncle, or godparent, you have a place in the Christian family. Because when we are baptized in the name of the one who was, who is, and who is to come, all of the other divisions that mark us, all of the other labels and identities that we hold, those take the back seat. And our first identity, our first being and existence is found in that Christian family. Look at the people around you. I mean it. Turn around. Look around the room. Look around the room. Maybe you've never met the people here. Maybe you have. Maybe you've known them for a long time. Maybe you've never met before. In Jesus, this is your brother. This is your sister. This is your child. This is your family. Now, don't we all feel that way sometimes, right? We don't get to choose who we go to church with, but we do have to choose to love them. Yes, we don't get to choose who's standing next in line at the grocery store, but we do have to love them. We don't get to choose who is in our community, in our neighborhoods. We don't get to choose them, but we have to choose them. In the human family, the Christian family, the banquet that is for all people that Jesus says, go out and find those who can't afford to bring a dish. Go out and find those who were not invited. Go out and find those who didn't know they would be welcome. And make sure you give them the best seat in the house. Make sure you pull out the finest china and the gold spoons, and you ensure that they know they are the guest of honor. Go out and tell the love of Jesus in such a way that it is a living word for a hurting world that can bring healing to those who need it. I know I do. Do you? A few days ago, there was another shooting in Minneapolis. where 2 children died. And that broke my heart. I'm sure it broke all of yours too. And if it didn't, I imagine it's only because in self-preservation, some of us have had to go a little bit numb, because tragedy after tragedy has threatened to break us and shatter us. That some folks have gone numb to these hurts. And as I held my baby closer, I wondered, what can I contribute? How can I be a person that contributes to a healing world? I feel God's answer to my prayer is to be a contributor and a believer, a testifier that there is hope and there is light. Because that is the thing that raises light. That is the thing that raises hope. That is an act of resistance, to stand in the face of devastation, to stand in the willingness to stand squarely in the suffering with those who are hurting, to say, I see it, I see you, I feel it, I'm here with you, because the only thing worse than suffering is suffering alone. In togetherness. Okay, so in community, we find this strength to face a world that's hard to face on our own. In community, we find an inner resilience that the fires are stoked for in the midst of the adversity. Now, I told you my title is Intergenerational Ministry. What the heck is intergenerational ministry? It has been misunderstood to be a formation director across ages. Baby, I gotta do this, honey. I'm sorry. Patience, okay? Okay? Uncle Colin, can you help? Or Auntie, thank you. These are her godparents. It's good to have lots of kinds of family. So, intergenerational ministry, what do I do? My job is to inspire, is to teach what church can look like, what the community, the faith family can look like when we bring everybody of all ages together. And here's a really great example of it. Y'all have been so patient, so gracious, so kind, and I'm truly grateful and inspired by it. And also the richness that comes with bringing that to the next level of discipleship together. Now, when I moved here from the Diocese of Hawaii 2 months ago. Now, in Hawaii, which I know your rector loves the Hawaiian shirts, the spirit of aloha is strong here. In Hawaii, Native Hawaiian people, they have a word for their elders, and it is kupuna. The kupuna are the elders of the wisdom, the knowledge, the things of the Native Hawaiian life that makes Native Hawaiian people Native Hawaiian, that makes them Hawaiian. Now, the kingdom of Hawaii, before it was overthrown by the United States, the last reigning monarch was Queen Liliuokalani, and she was confirmed an Episcopalian during her early life. And she practiced the faith of the Episcopal Church throughout her life, through her death. It was an Episcopal bishop who buried her after her death. At one point, the Episcopal Church was even declared the official church of the Kingdom of Hawaii. So it's a really interesting dynamic. It's a really interesting dynamic where we have this fraught history there because of the tension between colonialism, the overthrow of the kingdom, and that the Episcopal Church, the tradition we are a part of, benefited and was part of that too, even though it was the religion of the monarchy itself. very fraught with nuance of complexity and conflict and colonialism and the suffering of indigenous people over time that we still see the impacts of today. So the church there has this very unique role of affirming, repairing, and seeking reconciliation among the Hawaiian kingdom, while also remembering that it was Jesus, the King of Kings, that the kingdom's own monarch worshiped and followed. So I share this little bit of history lesson as one access point to start thinking about how in our own context here can we live in the middle of complexities and still gather around shared purpose, shared light, shared love to pursue incremental reconciliation over time, right? Generation to generation. The scripture in the second reading said Jesus was the same for the previous generation and is the same now and to come, right? Jesus has always been with God, always was since the beginning of time, came in the form of human nature, and again ascended into heaven. And in our faith tradition, we say every week that we believe Jesus will come again. So we are standing in the in-between. We're standing in the temporal, liminal space of between when Jesus ascended into heaven and the time when Jesus will come again and wipe away every tear, hopefully my daughters, and make all things right as they are meant to be. Until then, in this in-between time, we get this short blip of a life. One precious, wild life. The poet Mary Oliver has this wonderful poem, and in it, in one of her poems called Wild Geese, she says, "What will you do with your one wild and precious life?" This one blip that we get, even if you are the eldest person in the room, I imagine you might say that it's gone far too fast, that the years have just gone by so quickly, you don't know where the time went, and as we age, it goes faster and faster. We get this one short human life to make an impact on the world that, and the time and the place that we have been called into. Today's gospel, when it says go and invite everyone, come to the party, come to the banquet, come and see, it is encouraging us from a stance of humility to step into that role, that space that God has carved out in only the shape of you that you can fill. Only you, this shape that God has carved out into the world, only you can fill in this particular time, in this particular generation, in this particular moment of our shared humanity. Do not leave it to someone else. Do not defer to someone else thinking that they can do it for you or that they'll take care of it and so you don't have to, because the banquet needs all of us to step into that role, to step into the place that God has carved out for each and every one of us, to think of each other as family and to live like it, to believe it with all of who we are and all we have to give. It does not take the perfect children's program. It doesn't take the perfect music program. It doesn't take the perfect priest or sermon. It takes a community of people who are willing to love each other as Jesus loved them and who are willing to love God with all of their mind and body and heart. That is what it takes. You do not have to go to seminary. You do not have to get a degree. You do not have to know every word in the Bible. What you need to know is love. And you need to be willing to share that love. Once you have known it, there is no going back. There's a hymn like that. No turning back, no turning back. What is the banquet of St. John's? There's a reason you have been called to this place, this people, this time. You, the people of St. John the Baptist, of your namesake, St. John in the Bible, St. John the Baptist, he was the voice in the wilderness crying out, pointing all people who were willing to hear toward Jesus Christ. St. John the Baptist went down to the river and he proclaimed that Jesus was coming and Jesus was for all people. He proclaimed that healing and reconciliation knew no bounds, that there was no sin so terrible that grace could not be found when one came to meet Jesus. That the waters of the Jordan could cleanse any soul, any person from anywhere who had done anything if they desired and longed for Jesus. People of St. John, how might you live into that call to be a people that proclaim mercy that knows no bounds, that proclaims inclusion that knows no exception, that proclaims God's love is for everyone, no matter where you're from or where you've been or what you've done or how you come dressed to church, no matter what town you live in or how much money you make or what your job is or isn't, that God's love is for you. My hope for you as the canon for intergenerational ministry is that you'll continue to live into that in a way that you create an access point for people of all ages and backgrounds and walks of life. That you'll lean into each other and continue to lift each other up because you are family. And oh, by the way, you're part of the family of the wider diocese. You're part of the family of the wider Episcopal Church. You're part of the family of all the denominations of the Christian body. You're part of the family of the whole human family of all creation. What would the world look like if we could wake up and meet each day with a true belief that those we cross paths with were our family? How might it change the world? I believe it begins with us. It begins with believing that we have an agency to make a difference in this world, in this short, precious, wild life, and to be a people that proclaim justice and mercy and inclusion beyond any bounds. Thank you for making this an intergenerational space that is full of love. I hope that we'll continue to grow in Jesus' likeness together, and we'll continue in conversation, I know, after this service about what that could look like in practical terms for this congregation. Amen.